Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Garnsey-Harder, and I'm the Executive Director of the Virtual Campus, eLearning, and Instructional Technology here at the college. And I'm pleased to be introducing Alison Leahy and Amy Rovner today. They collaborated on a massive open online course, a MOOC, developed that and taught that last summer, 2015. And I'm proud to say that the eLearning office that I represent sponsored that course. It was very exciting, and it's going to be exciting to hear their experiences teaching such a big course. They had over 1,300 participants from 6 different regions of the world. So it was a free, what's exciting was it was a free class open to the world, and the world came. So they're going to share with us what they learned about teaching the class and their plans for offering it again, which is next summer. So in your program, you'll see information about that if you want to take the class. I wanted to ask, you might be asking, how many people have heard of a MOOC before? Okay, has anyone taken a MOOC before? Great, okay, so if you haven't taken this MOOC, consider it. It starts July 11th. So let me just say a few words about Alison and Amy. Alison Leahy, in the blue, is a professor of nutrition at Shoreline. She was the past director of nutrition for the Nutrition and Dietetic Technology program. She taught nutrition at the University of Washington prior to Shoreline. And she worked in product development and sensory science at Lowry's Foods, which is really interesting. She's designed, illustrated, and authored nutrition education materials and curricula. She has a Master of Science degree in Nutritional Sciences from the UW down the street, and a Bachelor of Science in Foods and Nutrition from Cal State Polytechnic University in Pomona, California. She's also a registered dietitian. And Amy has taught nutrition here for the last 5 years, part-time. She also works full-time in the same office that I do as an instructional designer. So she provides instructional design support for faculty who are teaching e-learning courses like online or hybrid courses at our institution. She's been interested in food and its connection to health and wellness and well-being for a long time, and her undergraduate degree was in hotel administration with a concentration on food and beverage management from Cornell, and she earned a master's of public health and nutrition degree from the UW. She's also a registered dietitian, so I think we're in good hands today. So the format is they have a presentation for us for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we have some mics in the audience, so if you could just raise your hand when we come to the time for questions, we'll get a mic to you so people can hear you in this room, as well as we're being recorded, so for the recording's sake. So join me in welcoming Amy and Alison.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. We don't need to introduce ourselves because Ann just did such a nice job. Thank you, Ann. So we're going to just jump right in because we, of course, have way too much we want to tell you in a short amount of time. So today, just really a brief overview of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about what a MOOC is, and it seems like most folks aren't really familiar with that, so we'll define that. We'll talk about healthy regional dietary patterns, and we're going to go through the different regions of the world that we looked at in the course, and we'll share some information with you. And we're going to be providing examples of how the course impacted our participants and how people from all over the world came together to discuss food and how it kind of brought everyone together, and it was very, very cool. So what is a MOOC? So a MOOC is a massive open online course. And there's many of them these days. And when we say massive, I mean some of them have 20,000 students. We didn't have quite that many, but we had a lot. Our normal online classes have 30, so totally different model. It's free. Most MOOCs are free. You don't earn official credit, but you can earn certificates that you can put on resumes and LinkedIn. And now some places are offering certificates that are a little more official for some money. So we did not charge. Ours was completely free, and it was funded by our eLearning office. Thank you, Ann. So ours was called Celebrating Food and Wellness Around the Globe. And we had 1,311 students, which was mind-boggling for both of us. We had them fill out a welcome survey, and so 421 people filled it out. And I just picked out some interesting pieces of information that came out of that survey. 78% had English as their primary language, but 19% did not. So 19% were using English as a second language skills to participate. 84% were female. That's a little high for a MOOC, but I think because of the food component and the wellness and health, more women were interested. Our age range, 77% were 25 to 64, which we would expect. But we also had a nice little group that were 13 to 18. So we're talking like 8th grade through high school. And some homeschooled students I know took our class. And 21% had never taken an online class before. So I think a number of you have not. Don't be intimidated. This is a great, fun, easy way to try it out. And one of the questions asks sort of, what are your goals? So when you sign up for a MOOC, you don't have to be, I'm going to get all the way to the certificate and that's what I have to do. You can also just be an observer. People sign in, they kind of look around, they pick out some information that they like and they move on, and that's okay. And there's kind of 4 levels, and then there's people who are completers, who want that certificate. And we actually had 99 folks who did all of the work required to earn a certificate for our course. So we were kind of happy about that. That was more than we expected.
So one thing too, we did have a lot of other students who introduced themselves through just the introductory part and did not fill out the welcome survey. So there were, I would say, a bit more men in that one as well. So yeah, and we had some Shoreline students
We
who
did.
also. Mm-hmm.
We did. And I'm going to skip over most of this. But we had a whole range of people represented. MOOCs typically are taken with people with a lot of higher education, higher degrees, but our group really was much more across the stratum. We had some high school students, some folks who had completed a little college or a 2-year degree. So we had a really great, diverse group of people interacting. We had professional chefs, we had homemakers, we had instructors, we had language teachers, we had people just from all walks of life. So it was really fun to have them come together and share their experiences. And so where were they from, right? 61 countries. 61 countries. We thought, oh, we'll get 5 or 6. 61 countries. We plotted it on a map, I mean, just across the globe. So as we studied different regions, everyone could say, hey, in my hometown, and we'd have voices of real knowledge sharing with the group. So that was also very cool. I should stop saying that, but it was. Really briefly, our course design, it was a 6-week course. So we had 6 weekly, we call them modules, but 6 weeks of content you could go through. And we would do a video introduction for each week. So Alison and I would do like a 2-minute video introducing you to the topic, sharing a little bit of current nutrition research about that area. And we wanted to show you a little snippet, but we're having problems with the audio, so we're going to skip it, if it will let me. Yep. But you can watch it if you sign up this summer. You can see one. We also shared research and resources. So videos for people who like video interaction. We also had, this is a sample page, but some links to things that people can read on their own if they prefer to read the text. And then we'd have what's called a discussion. So in an online class, obviously you're not having a face-to-face discussion like this. Instead, we'd pose questions. People would think about it. They'd write in their answers. All the other students can see the answers, and then they'd reply. And so you get this rich discussion going back and forth. And we also encourage students to choose a country or a region within whatever area we were studying and have them, if they wanted to do a little more research about that area. And they would post that to the discussion, and then they could talk about what they found. And they shared resources as well on a page here. So if they had special stuff, they would put it up there for everyone to see. So kind of group knowledge sharing.
And some shared in their discussion. So we had videos and links and pyramids that they also shared right there.
Yep. And then every week we would do a demonstration cooking video, because we know how much everyone loves to go on, online or to watch cooking shows. And so we would do regionally appropriate healthy cuisine. And again, I can't show you a sample because the sound's not working, so we'll skip that. So this is our 6 weeks. We started, and we're going to go through each week with you and tell you a little bit about those regions. But that's what the course looks like when you enter, and all you do is you click on the week and you jump into the content. And so week 1 was a little different because that was our introductory week. And we wanted, the first discussion was just tell us about yourself. And this is how we learned what country people were from, what their background was, why they were taking the course. And because it was a study of food and wellness, we kind of wanted to talk about why is food so important? You know, why is it such a part of life? It's not just something that you do when you move on. And so we talked a lot about the joy of food and why, you know, what kind of eating occasions bring people together and what kind of foods do you eat when you come together as a family or with friends. And so people shared all kinds of fascinating stories and memories of grandparents and gardens and tables and picnics, and it was really, really fun to read. And then we did a cooking demo, and then after the cooking demo, the last activity of the week is always, now you're cooking. So you've done research on an area, you've seen a little cooking we've done, and then you get to go and apply what you've learned to your own cooking. So it could either be the region that you looked at, and then you share it, or something like, for in this instance, it was what you cook that's a family food that is special to your heart or has meaning for you. And here's just a couple quotes. I was born in South Carolina, and my earliest, happiest food memory is sitting on the back porch on a hot summer day, eating an ice-cold slice of watermelon and letting the juice dribble down my chest. So that was someone's memory. I used to go out with my family too on Sunday. After church, we usually go out to a noodle house in Indonesia. It was a little quality time with family. And in my region here in Spain, it's typical when we are going to celebrate a birthday, each of us brings something to eat. It's called, and forgive my Spanish, sopa del cabase. And that was Ana from Spain. Oh, and one more. So Vida from the Philippines. In my country, the Philippines, people here take food very seriously. One of the most common greetings roughly translate to, have you eaten yet? And families always strive to eat together whenever possible. So, you know, little peeks into culture. It was really fun. So, do you want to take it away?
Okay, yeah, so figure out how to do this thing. All right. Yeah, so we started off by looking through the discussions, and our second week here is Europe. And so students would investigate a country, and we really spanned, we'll show you the map, on into Russia as well. So just a big wide expanse there. So the participants chose a country to investigate or an area. Some chose a region and did some research on it, shared a lot of information, and then shared a recipe. So you can see with the blue, we had kind of a large area there. We focus on wellness as well as diet as we went on through these different regions. So the Mediterranean diet has been the one that has been most researched. We have a lot of data on that, and data continues. A lot of the studies are coming out of Spain, and we have seen reduced rates of heart disease, diabetes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's for those who follow this diet. So we tend to see a lot of whole grains eaten, vegetables, olives, nuts, and seeds, and a little less emphasis on the dairy and the meat, smaller amounts of cheese, yogurts, a fair amount of fish for those living along the coast, and also just a really nice focus with eating as a community, not so much in a hurry, a lot less stress, and then just every day people are walking and moving around. We have this exercise. Yeah. And sort of on this theme, we have these blue zones that have been investigated, and these are areas where people live the longest in the world and often age really well. So they're trucking along in their 90s and 100s and don't have heart disease or diabetes and so forth. And you can see there are two there in Europe. We have Sardinia and Icaria, so those are in Italy and Greece. Both of those regions are a bit isolated. Very rural where the people live. Sometimes these healthiest diets have been considered, quote, poor diets in these countries, and that the wealthy are eating more meats and so forth. They get a lot of exercise, pretty relaxed, and just live very, very long lives and are quite healthy. So we've had a lot of research into these areas. We'll be looking at all the blue zones as we go through here. We also looked at the Nordic diet because we're getting some research coming in on this. So when you look at the countries up in Scandinavia and so forth, we've seen some very good health statistics too. And the actual diets, sort of the proportion are similar, just different foods because you have a different geography. So more of the root vegetables, summer berries, canola oil, a lot of fish with cod, And again, that same kind of proportion where you have more of a plant-based diet and fish. These were all the regions that the students investigated. So most popular, I would say, was the Greece and Italy, as well as the Nordic area. So we had a lot of folks that were either from that area or had grandparents and family in that area or had visited or who wanted to go there, were investigating. This got very interesting. If someone would submit a recipe for a Greek salad, someone who was actually living in that area of Greece would respond, well, that looks really good. Actually, when we are here in Greece, we do this. And so we had a lot of nice interchange back and forth with people sharing recipes. We also had a nice community from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Latvia, Czechoslovakia, submitting a lot of recipes as well. So just fascinating to see these all. A lot of talking about them back and forth on the discussion. They included food pyramids. We had one of Poland. I don't know if you, yep. That was submitted by a participant, the Polish food guide pyramid. That was a photograph a student took of a Greek salad that she made. Another student gave a Mediterranean diet pyramid. Yeah, so in each sort of region, they are looking at information as well as the recipes, and a lot of interest in health. We'd get comments like, well, I was diagnosed with diabetes, so now I'm paying more attention to my diet, and this is what I've heard was healthy. So we've had a lot of that. Alrighty. Yeah, so then we moved on to the Middle East, India, and Africa here, and you can see again by the blue where we were. Much more of a vegetarian emphasis in some of these countries, particularly India. High in fiber and very definitely high in spices, very rich delicious foods, very aromatic. We have a variation on the Mediterranean diet for sure, as you're still around the Mediterranean, just on the southern side a bit more. Olive oil, legumes, fish, depending where you lived, whole grains and vegetables. In India, depending on where you were, like with the Hindu area, definitely vegetarian, a lot of vegetables, fruits, yogurt, rice, ghee, lentils, curries, aromatic spices, tending for the most part, with the exception of the ghee, to be low in animal fat. And we definitely see less cancer, stroke, heart disease, and especially less Alzheimer rates. Some of the lowest Alzheimer rates in the world are in India. So there's been a lot of interest, a lot of research on some of the spices used, like turmeric. And so we have seen a lot of interest in, how these little bits of spices. Yeah, I have a colleague, and you know, he has a mother and a grandmother and a great-grandmother who's in her hundreds in India, and he says with each generation it gets spicier. He cannot eat. He cannot eat his grandmother's food, and she's just, so that's another interesting kind of thing, looking at the preventative sort of areas. We had students from all over in Africa, and of course Africa is a huge continent with many different cuisines and countries that tend to have a fair amount of yams, beans, cassava, millet, barley, and teff, a number of different vegetables, fruits, again generally lower in animal fat. And they have some of the lowest colon cancer rates in the world. And colon cancer is kind of a more common cancer in this country. So again, we tend to look at some of these diets from these other areas of the world. What are they doing right? What could we be doing so that we can lower our chronic disease risks? And a lot of this food too was just very delicious and colorful. And I think we have, I'll show you a slide in a minute, So these were all the countries that the students investigated, and you can see how wide-ranging they are, from all over. Just a couple student highlights. The health benefits of eating traditional Indian food are pretty impressive. Ginger and turmeric have been found to fight Alzheimer's. The rate is 4 times lower than the US. The students submitted that picture. Here's another one from Africa. Here's an image showing injera with several stews. They might not look like much, but these dishes are always highly spiced and extremely flavorful. So, and there's often a big family community. I actually had a student in my class from East Africa, and she would cook for her family of 35, which was served on Sunday. You know, she spent all Saturday preparing. So a really lovely sense of community, sitting around and sharing. Then we moved on into Asia, the Pacific Islands, and Australia there, as well as New Zealand. And traditional diets in Japan and China, we have seen, again, some extremely great health benefits, reduced risks of heart disease, cancer, obesity. Again, a lot of plant foods eaten, cabbage, soy, green tea. We see tons of antioxidants, vitamins and minerals, phytonutrients. We have a blue zone there with Okinawa, which are some of the longest lived folks in the world on their traditional diet. And this is another area where we see a lot of research and a lot of studies. We've also had a big China study done out of Cornell and looking at how the rural Chinese were eating. And again, we see these lower rates of disease, which has brought up this curiosity, what are they doing right and what can we do here in our country so that we can live longer like them. In Okinawa, in addition to the very nutritious foods that they are eating, which include these beautiful purple yams, which I'm quite taken with just with the color, yeah. They also have this harahachi rule where you only eat till you're 80% full, as well as moving around. And many Americans eat more with their eyes. You just finish everything on your plate, and serving sizes have gotten larger and larger. Whereas here, there's more of the moderation, which is helpful. So you just don't see the obesity as well. Lower rates of hip fractures and depression, better memory and sleep with the Okinawan elderly. So again, all these benefits. Australia has an interesting diet. We kind of focused a bit more on some of the indigenous foods because a lot of the other Australian diet, Amy has been to Australia, I have not, but what would you say?
I would say beer and French fries, and then some more beer. Kind of a like English, Western European diet, not the healthiest.
Yeah, we had a chef from Australia, and he kept saying, we need to talk more about meat. He was a big fan of meat, yeah. So he says no one eats the indigenous foods, but we wanted to focus on them because we're seeing some sort of a revived interest in both Australia and New Zealand in the farmers markets and so forth. So again, a lot of plant foods, seafoods, very colorful, and again, a nice sense of community and sharing meals. So the students, the participants in our MOOC investigated these countries. Many of them were from these countries. The most popular was Australia. Yeah, a lot of people had been there. We also had a fair amount of interest in Southeast Asia as well as some of the Southern Pacific Islands. And here's some student highlights here. So this one student says, responding to another, I feel like I'd be right at home in Tasmania, as the produce markets and fresh fish are also staples here in Vancouver. British Columbia is Canada's top producer of apples, and when the harvests come in the next couple months, the supply is great, and the prices are too. There are also many artisanal cheeses, and we've actually had a fair amount of participants all over the world saying, hey, we have this in our country too, and this reminds me, we eat soup before the meal here too. So it really was great to see this sharing. Okay, here's one from Vietnam looking at pho. So a delicious broth, so the student was mentioning it. Vietnamese food is known to be one of the healthiest in the world because of the importance placed on a balance of yin and yang to create food that is beneficial to the body. So looking at food in a larger spiritual sort of health way as well. And here's another example of a healthy eating pyramid. Australia's. And we had some from Southeast Asia that were actually in other languages too, which Amy and I could not read, but really cool. Really with a pyramid, you get a visual. They're all pretty similar in that they have the whole grains, fruits and vegetables, often legumes, heart-healthy oils as more of the basis of the diet. All righty. The Americas and the Caribbean. So that includes us, the United States, as well as South America and Canada and the Caribbean. And here we again focused on traditional diets. We looked at particularly the Three Sisters, which is a combination of corn, beans, and squash. Growing these together is beneficial for the soil, and it's fabulous for your health. Slow digesting carbs. We see a lower intake of glucose, which benefits blood sugar control. Soluble fiber binds up cholesterol in the gut so that you absorb less, so we see lower cholesterol levels. Again, many, many nutrients in there, very filling. A lot of vegetables, wild grains, some grains, and then some meat and seafood. We have 2 blue zones in this area, one in Costa Rica. Again, this one's right on the ocean, so a lot of seafood, plant foods, a sense of purpose, family, hard work. And the other one are the Seventh-day Adventists, which is a religious community in Southern California, and they are vegetarian or vegan and live a very long life. And again, really have a big emphasis on community, health, exercise, of course, plant foods, nuts and seeds. What's interesting when looking at their diet and health is they find that the Adventists who live the longest are the ones who eat nuts. It doesn't seem to matter quite as much if they're vegetarian versus vegan. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of research also with the Mediterranean looking at benefit of nuts and seeds in the diet. These are the regions our students investigated. We had some traditional diets up in our country in Alaska and Canada, as well as many throughout South America and the Caribbean islands. Some student highlights. We are beginning to see a resurgence of Native American food. The sous chef, Sean Sherman, has been especially active, bringing light, healthful recipes using traditional Native American flavors, pre-reservation food. The Peruvian diet includes seafood, grains, legumes, fruits, small quantities of meat. Many of the nutrient-rich superfoods, such as quinoa and cacao, from which we get chocolate, were cultivated in Peru. These are becoming more available as information and awareness about their nutritional benefits are spreading. And then Mary here comments, much of the protein of the Caribbean diet is supplied from beans and legumes. And then we had desserts, yeah. So Amy and I are huge
Everyone's
fans
smiling.
of desserts, yeah. And I see dessert as a joyful, positive thing. They can add a lot of health. And we can see you can have whole grains. Amy had a very delicious sort of fruit cobbler, so you had sort of a crunchy granola type crust with a lot of oats and nuts and whole grains in there, and then some berries. You can have vegetables as well as fruits, you know, like with rhubarb or carrots, and many, many fruits offer vitamins, antioxidants, phytonutrients, nuts and seeds, of course. Dairy, some of our students chose to investigate dairy. I had a student from China investigate red bean, which was some of his favorite used in desserts. And then chocolate, we have a lot of research coming in on chocolate showing benefits with lowering blood pressure, cardiovascular health, reducing coughs. It's kind of interesting. All kinds of great things, which is wonderful news to me because I'm a huge chocolate fan. These are the ingredients we had students investigate for the desserts. And they tended to focus on really nutritious recipes. So you can see they looked at some different dairy, as well as fruits and vegetables and nuts, and even some sweeteners. We had maple syrup and honey as their ingredient. And then looking at some of the recipes, many with honey, I thought of baklava, you know, in the Middle East. So. Okay, as my palate matures, I'm beginning to like other flavors commonly associated with desserts. Fruits, honey, cinnamon and nutmeg, dark chocolate and cream. I feel better about eating these types of desserts because I know all of them have healthful properties, especially in moderation. I do want to share a very happy memory of my grandmother. On Sundays during the summer, she would bring her ice cream machine and make peppermint ice cream for dessert. I could hardly wait. This was Juanita. I agree that sometimes it's about the happy hormones that less than healthy but traditional desserts give. Good memories of favorite people and pleasant times. Do you want to talk some more?
All right.
Okay.
So there's also a follow-up survey, and some students just felt like sharing their thoughts on the class with us, even without being prompted. And so thank you also to all the fellow explorers of food from around the world. I wish you much success as you continue to pursue healthy eating in a way that nourishes you in body, mind, and soul. And it's been an immensely enriching, educated, and enlightening experience for me to engage in conversations with classmates from around the world, discussing, debating, and sharing healthy food, culture, and fun. Thank you so much. So students really enjoyed it. Oh, and this was a great interaction. So a student outlined a traditional Polish diet, including borscht and pierogies. And then a discussion followed over several posts. And a Russian student said, if you ask any East European citizen about borscht and pierogi, we will claim they are most traditional in our country, but not anywhere else. So she was thinking it was really funny that the Polish student was claiming them, but she's like, that's Russian. And then a student who had traveled in Colombia mentioned, so we started thinking about foods and how they cross cultural lines. And so she'd been in Colombia and she said, I wonder how they vary across countries. In Latin America, they have similar thing with arepas and empanadas. Various countries have them, but they vary in their preparations and ingredients. So again, in South America, they're like, no, the empanadas are ours, but by country, they might claim them differently. And I guess and Alison can speak to this as well, as we were approaching this class, it was really hard to take on the global diet and kind of parse it and make sense of it. And even as we were going through, what we realized, the same message that dietitians have been giving for years is moderation in your diet. Really try and stick to plants in your main component of your diet, be plant-based. Keep it varied, mix it up, and you can eat meat or seafood in moderation. But that's sort of the message that there's all the fad diets out there, and really the bottom line is mainly plants, keep it varied, moderation, and you'll do well for your health. And I think it was such a great way to bring these folks from around the world together. And I think we expected that to a degree, but I think we didn't really appreciate. It was almost like we could bring peace to the world if we could just get everyone at the table talking about food, because it was so friendly and we had all kinds of cultures and groups and religions talking, and it was all amicable, and it was all because people love food and it's such an important part of our lives.
And they were also very interested in relating that to health. So, and chatting with each other about, and what's it like over there, and how do you do this? And it just became this huge community, really exciting. We had no idea we would get that many students. We did, by the way, respond to each one, in the introduction. So,
at least once,
so 1,300, so that they would feel welcomed and included, but definitely warm and inclusive, Learn so much from each other, in addition from us, when you say?
Oh, I was going to say, and the only thing that they wished we had done that we hadn't done the first time around was they wanted to keep going. They didn't want the class to close. They wanted to keep talking with each other. And so we're doing it again this summer, and so we're trying to find the best way to keep that conversation going so they can keep sharing. And we didn't really talk about the recipes as much. I mean, every week we had hundreds of recipes shared, and we tried to put them all in a Google Doc, and after 1 week it was 89 pages long, and so that kind of didn't work. So we're thinking about using maybe Facebook or Google. We're trying to figure out what the best thing is internationally for folks to access. So maybe the week they submit recipes, they do it on Facebook. So it's going to be open forever, because it's a lot to go through. There were hundreds and hundreds of posts, and so if you really wanted to save recipes, unless you did it that moment, it's really hard to find it again. So that's sort of the two things that they wished we had done differently. So we're working on those for the summer version this year.
They wanted a cookbook,
So there's the information. It can't register just yet, but it does start July 11th. It is on canvas.net, so that's a MOOC. It's a free place. There's all kinds of interesting classes there if you're interested. At shoreline.edu on our website, you can search MOOCs, and it will take you to the MOOC page, and that's where you can have a direct link to sign up. Sign up start May 30th, though. So, or just call eLearning, and we'll tell you. So we hope some of you sign up, and then I think we have time for questions. So. And
just to add, you can be an observer. I've had some faculty here saying, well, I'm kind of shy, I will sign up, but I don't want to contribute. And others love to contribute, and others also want to get the certificate, but you don't have to. So it's, you can just get on. Okay, question.
All right, here's the microphone.
So,
we have a question.
We have a couple of microphones. Ask the questions, and Ann here is going to police questions, and she and I will.
First of all, let me congratulate you, because I am blown away by what you pulled off on so many levels. So my first comment was, how did you manage your marketing to get 1,300 people? When they're from all over 61 countries, that's mind-blowing for me. And the second part of my question is, I so wanted to see this piece of turning these students that you've had online into ambassadors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How could you put these students with all this energy and all these registrants who've come together in community to put them to work for the greater good? You know, many of these people are in Africa and dealing with poverty and dealing with nutrition at such a basic level. Like, how do you leverage the benefit of what you generated?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. My name is Janice Wignall, and I'm actually an educator, and I've become a Shoreline resident. And I was on campus yesterday visiting the biotech lab, and I saw the poster. I was like, oh, I'm going to go to that.
Oh, that's so great. We
So
actually have some students from Africa who are there working with nutrition with some poorer communities and discuss that on the MOOC. So that was exciting to see, and interested in what they'd learned from the MOOC and how they could bring this to the people they were working with. So it was fun to see that in action. And Amy, you can, I don't know how people found out about it.
Yeah, that's always a struggle, to how do you reach out to the whole world. Certainly Canvas.net has an international population that take many of their classes, so they do some marketing. Some people do a Google search for whatever topic they're interested in, and it might pop up. We're working on fine-tuning that, because we have another MOOC we're running right now on philosophy and film, and we have 1,000 participants from around the world. And so it's tricky. I mean, we've put it on every, Twitter, Facebook, everything we have our power to do, but I think that greater international audience, I think there's more interest internationally in MOOCs than maybe there is in our country per se, so people are out there actively seeking input. And once you've taken one MOOC, you start to get emails unless you unsubscribe, so you get little tidbits, reminders that new stuff is coming up from the different providers. So yeah, and maybe whatever we decide to do to continue to keep it open, I love that idea of ambassadors and kind of keep that momentum.
Yeah, I love that idea too. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a hand over there.
Other questions?
No?
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for allowing public in general to participate in your presentation. We went to a lecture some time ago about this presenter blaming the diets, American diets, on the wheat, that because of the changes in genetic GMO changes, blaming it on the wheat that we've been eating for this whatever recent generation. In your class, did you see any difference in the type of wheat that Americans eat versus the wheat in general in worldwide in other countries?
The wheat wasn't discussed so much. I do have a student in my class this quarter who's from China, and she's an honors student here, and her focus is looking at GMO crops where you have these genetically modified, and she's looking at GMO usage in countries all over the world, including China and India and Vietnam and Europe, and Russia has been the most resistant of the ones she's looked at to GMO use. And some countries in Europe. But yeah, we've had a lot of changes in a lot of crops, not just with wheat, but wheat has certainly been out there as for some potentially causing some digestive issues. Whether or not that's the case, we see a lot of disagreement in the scientific literature. Some will blame gluten. Other researchers say, well, it's a resistant starch. It's a fiber. It certainly is different than what primitive man ate. Most of our crops are. Yeah, some countries naturally don't eat as much wheat, like in Africa. They're focusing on cassava and yam. We have a lot of rice eaten in China, Southeast Asia, Philippines. Yeah, we're more up here where it grows, Canada. And but that's an interesting question. I don't think it's resolved yet, really, in the research world.
Other questions?
Yeah.
I suppose my name is Charlotte, and I'm also an educator.
Oh, lovely.
I was curious to hear what your thoughts are now that you run it one summer. What would you do differently, or what did you realize didn't work, and therefore you need to tweak it for the following summer?
Yeah, I think mainly it's that how we manage the recipes, because people were super interested in the recipes and wanted to save them and keep them and use them, but it was kind of overwhelming. And how to navigate the discussions, because sometimes we had 450 posts in a discussion, and we haven't shown you the class, but it becomes this like pages and pages long list. And so there's a couple ways we can tweak it, but really that keeping the community going was the biggest, not complaint, but desire that came out of it. So
yeah, they really loved that. What we sort of focused in on was answering each student in their kind of welcome, where they introduced themselves but backed off a bit in where they were submitting material about each country, because they really seemed to start enjoying chatting with each other. So it's easier for them to see the recipes without having constant comments from us in there. So we commented more in other areas. But yeah, they really wanted that cookbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're a little limited by technology in that one. Yeah, and Amy's our technology expert on that, as well as the folks at Canvas, and even they were saying, well, we're not quite there yet in how we can manage this. So it's sort of a new area, a big need. Yeah.
So, anything else?
Other questions there? I have a question.
Yeah.
The modules were sort of regionally organized. And did you identify those before registration, or did you wait until you saw who registered and then pick out the regions? How did that work?
Before.
Yeah, we took the globe and we wanted a 6-week course. We didn't want it longer than 6 weeks. And so with an intro week and an ending week, that left us with 4 weeks. And how do you chop up the globe into 4 pieces? It was pretty tricky. We went back and forth and around and which ones teach first. And we just decided we wanted to cover the whole globe, because someone is either interested in cuisine from there or they might be from there. And there's so many unique traditions that we wanted to see what fell out from the research.
So do you plan to organize it in a similar fashion this next time around?
I think it's lovely, because you really start to see these trends and similarities. We have a lot of students who travel to different areas and share this, and you get such a nice varied population with that as well. Yeah.
So they chose like a country that they would research. So did you have the list, or
No.
was it any country in that region?
Just the map, and some actually chose a region. So some chose a country, some might just say Western Africa, that kind of thing. Yeah,
we started listing out the countries, but I just didn't want to leave out a country, and there's so many in the regions. I just decided, it didn't really matter if they picked one that was maybe not Eastern Europe, it was, Middle East, whatever. It didn't really matter.
And we got some really interesting, sort of unique, rare islands we'd never heard of.
There's some dots on that
Yeah.
map that are just in the middle of the Pacific, and you're like, what is that?
I think one thing I was amazed by was how varied, given the fact that we did not, give any direction as to what they picked. We got such a beautiful sampling with every area.
Right.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I guess I have one more question.
Yeah.
What about anybody mentioned about eating of insects as a source of proteins? I understand a lot of insects are great sources of protein. So that would be one great food source, with the increase in population.
They absolutely are.
Any sharing of the insects
don't know that
recipes?
Not so much on the MOOC, but I've heard a bunch about that from my son,
Yeah.
who loves to cook, and he
Yeah.
was talking about, it's this new thing and a great source of protein, and so he's in his 20s, so the youth are talking about it at that point, but
I did not see any recipes that had insects in them, but
maybe this
absolutely
summer.
Yeah, you should sign up and provide some. Yeah, but that's definitely coming down the pike in terms of sustainability and the population growth, and there have been some really interesting articles. I share in my online class. I have an article about, I think it's mealworms, and how you can grow them in a small space. You feed them hardly anything, and they multiply, and they're a fantastic source of protein. So as like a help for like sub-Saharan Africa, if people are starving, to give them these very cheap kits that will feed their families. So it's a new way of looking at food, but I think it's one that I think other cultures than ours will be more open to initially. I think we will be a late adopter, I'm imagining.
Americans can be a little squeamish for that, yeah.
Yeah, but good
Any
question.
more questions? Well, we should probably close it, because I think there's somebody else going to be in the room. But please, everyone, join me in giving another round of applause.
Thank you so much for coming, and you're welcome to join up this summer if you just, even if you're super busy, you know, you can just click in once in a while and watch the conversations and see the recipes, and it's really, really fun. Yeah, we learn a
Thanks.
lot.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you.
And